Youth sports is broken. This episode will show you how to help your child keep loving the game, avoid quitting, and recognize when their drive is truly theirs.
Hello, and thank you for joining the Champion Within podcast, your premier go-to spot for unlocking your winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete looking to elevate your game to the next level, a coach leading the charge, an enthusiastic parent cheering from the sidelines, or an educator molding young minds, the Champion Within podcast episodes are packed with value, sharing the tools and strategies to unlock your potential and rise to new heights. Hosted by mentor, coach, and mindset leader Kate McCauley. Let's sit back and enjoy today's episode while discovering your champion within. And now, here's Kate.
Hey, champions. Thank you for joining us today on the Champion Within podcast. You are going to love this episode. Selfishly, I have so many questions floating through my brain for today's guest. And I don't know, we might have to have him back more than once. Today, we are getting to talk with Harvey Araton, and we are going to talk about his new book that is out. We're going to talk about youth sports. He has so many incredible journeys and different people that he has covered in his sport journey as a journalist. And now with his new book, I think my youth parents, the coaches, my athletes who listen are really going to gain a lot from this conversation. So I'm excited for all of us to gain some advice, lean in and listen and steal what Harvey has to offer today. Harvey, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Kate. Thrilled to be here.
Great. I'm excited to learn about the book. Let's dive right into that, and then we'll jump back into some of your experience in the sports world. Why did you write this new book? What was the inspiration here?
Well, right around the turn of the century, I want to say around 2002, I started exploring some issues in youth sports that I saw developing in the culture. Having raised two sons who played soccer, they ran the gamut from rec league to travel team to select teams and then on to high school. And they played some other sports as well. I was always interested in youth sports, and some of the things you see are wonderful on the sidelines and some of the things you see are terrifying on the sidelines. I think it was right around 2002 that I wrote a column for the New York Times raising the question related to Little League baseball in particular. When I grew up, the Little League World Series in Williamsport, the championship game was always televised on ABC's Wide World of Sports, which was a weekend feature. And it was kind of a novelty thing. It was kind of cool to see the kids, 12 years old, out there on the baseball field. But right around the turn of the century, I realized that every game in the Little League World Series was being televised by ESPN. It had become, like sort of a big deal. The question was percolating in my brain. Was this a celebration of kids, or was it an exploitation of kids, making them part of the for-profit network universe? So I called up some Little League officials and spoke to them about it. But there was a child sports psychologist who I interviewed who said something that has stayed with me through the years, and that was not a big deal for kids to be on television necessarily. Kids have appeared on game shows for generations. The question that he was raising was, how does this affect parents, coaches, communities at large with what they will do to actually get those kids to that national stage and spotlight? And as the years have gone on, and we've seen the youth sports culture become what is now a $40 billion industry in the United States, according to the New York Times story in July, it has made families, I believe, very vulnerable to the sales pitches of these very leveraged companies. You have private equity companies and very wealthy people buying up venues and tournaments and essentially delivering a message to families that if you don't get on board at a very young age and that ship sails, your child will be left behind. And that's creating something that not only is dangerous in terms of its sort of pay to play, which essentially leaves out a lot of families that can't afford it, but also the kind of pressure it exerts on families related to their budgets, financial budgets, and also, putting pressure on kids that too young an age. So anyway, I'd written a series of articles beyond that particular story about the World Series through the years. And about 3 years ago, I decided that, since those stories were all directed at parents, I wanted to write a story or something that would be directly related to children, to deliver a message about what's truly important and beneficial for kids of that age range, 8 to 12, give or take. And that's how I came up with this story, which is, really kind of reinforcing the fundamental purity of youth sports, the things that kids can really benefit from, more than all the noise in the community about college scholarships and whatnot.
So many things that I could pull apart there. We were actually at the Baseball Hall of Fame this past summer, and when we were looking at one of the exhibits, a big team came through and some of the dads, and my son said, some of these baseball dads are really crazy. And I said, some of them are, you're right. And he's like, are they in the game? When I work with teams, sometimes the coaches come to me and say, our teams need this. They're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. When I go in to work with the players, I do an activity called Leave It in Your Locker. I ask each player to just write down whatever they want, to just let that be left outside of the space, whether we're in a gym or a classroom, just for that time so they can focus on learning and just to, get our heads in the right place, because they're very stressed about a lot of things. It's pressure related to the sport. It's what their parents are saying. It's other things like normal things, seventh graders all the way through high schoolers and even like college athletes with school and life. They don't want to say it out loud because they don't want their coaches and parents to think that they can't handle it, but they don't really have the tools to navigate through. You've seen a lot of elite athletes when you've covered those sports. In your book, what do you talk about there? Is there a little piece that maybe you could share advice-wise and connected to the book where at that seventh grade level, I know it's for like eight-year-old to about 12 or 13, right, would be the reading level here, where if they're facing this type of pressure.
Well, the book actually begins with the main character, whose name is Zane, but is known as Z throughout the story, called that by friends and family. He wakes up on the morning of his first U13 travel game, and the team has started out as kind of hopeless, at the age of 5, and they've, progressed through the years. They've picked up some players, they've developed their skills, they've moved into the travel realm, and by the time they are in 7th grade, they are an elite select team, now playing a regional schedule. But unfortunately for Z, who's had some family trauma in his life, the kids that he grew up with and have surrounded him for all these years are now pretty much gone, because the team has, in its progression, certain kids have dropped out because it became too intense for them, or it became too unaffordable for their families, or a couple of kids just got cut, which happens as these teams progress. He's at a point in his young life where the personal needs, the emotional needs that he has outweigh the needs to be on this prestigious team that's aiming for a national tournament in Las Vegas. He wakes up that morning knowing that he does not want to play anymore, but he has to break the news to his mother, who has become the driving force as the parent manager to the ambitious nature of this team. And he has to work up his nerve, and he finally walks downstairs. He's wearing his uniform, but his cleats and socks are, left on the floor by his bed. And she looks at him like, what are you doing? We have to leave. And he just breaks the news to her that I'm not playing anymore. The story then goes back to his very beginnings as a young soccer player, when his father is his mentor and coach, and takes us through the years, basically the early years of his career. And it focuses on all the pleasures of youth sports, but also the perils, some of the things that happen that are not so enjoyable for parents and kids. And then it brings us back to the point where he has quit and sets up the ending, the last several chapters. And the story is really about a boy coming to the realization of the terms under which he wants to play. I think the message for kids, and I worked really hard on the ending to hopefully leave any child who reads the book, regardless of the sport they play and the level that they play at, but to leave them with the understanding of the true benefits of playing a team sport at those young, tender ages.
Mm.
And for parents who would read the book with their child to discuss it, the message would be to let your child demonstrate or indicate what they want out of youth sports.
Yeah.
There's plenty of time for them as they get into pre-adolescence, if they are gifted and talented and driven, to make the sacrifices that are necessary to play at those elite levels.
Mm-hmm.
But at these younger ages, I think we really have to listen to our kids, whether it's from their body language, whether it's from the things they write in their lockers that you were talking about, Kate,
Right.
or just coming out and say it. Kids are very perceptive and bright. They understand when their parents are investing, sums of money and time into their youth sports career. And some of
Right.
them might, instead of being inspired by that, might feel incredible pressure, not want to fail the family, not want, and many kids, let's face it, who are the stars on the field, on the soccer field, or the lacrosse field, or the field hockey field, at the age of 8 are going to be just ordinary players from the time they're 12.
Very
How
true.
do they feel about that? These are questions that I think are becoming much more important as families invest much larger sums in their young athletes' careers.
Very true. You're reminding me of a moment, again, my oldest, he was maybe in second grade at this point. The rec league directors came up to my husband and I and said, you should move him up. Move him up. He's too good to be at this level. And I said, I don't know about that. I think he wants to play with his friends. They're like, yeah, but he's too good. He should be moving up. We left and I said to my husband, I just really don't think that's a good idea. And he's like, should we ask Danny? I'm like, I don't actually think we should ask Danny. He's in second grade. My husband and I came to the decision that we wanted him to be confident on the court as a second grader with all the second graders and play with his friends and have fun. Time goes on. He gets to high school, playing high school basketball. He made a really tough decision and decided at the end of junior year, after playing summer ball, that he didn't want to play senior year. And he wanted to play CYO locally in town ball with his buddies who all were in senior year with him. We were like, you got to do what makes you happy. Last night I was at the gym with him and I was doing my workout. He's 20 now. I see him in the distance just talking with people and interacting. And he just carries himself with such confidence and self-awareness of who he is. I truly believe all those little decisions stacking up over the years of letting him and us think what is best for him. Not let's move you up to be with all the kids so you can have this advantage. I think there's this pressure though, because other parents did say to my husband and I, why didn't you do that? If the league told me I could move my son up, we would have jumped at that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious from your viewpoint of being around a lot of elite athletes and then diving into writing this book, why do you think there is all of this pressure? Is it because of that for-profit that they're just pressuring us into that? Where do you think it's coming from?
Well, first I have to say that we had, my wife and I, a very similar experience with our son at a very young age, and the benefits that he accrued from a decision that we made without consulting him. I'll get to it in a couple of minutes, but
Okay.
I kind of think, let's face it, I mean, if you have a child who is brilliant at math, right, or art, I won't include music because music is very visible, performances, things like that. Let's just stick with math or science or something like that. Chances are the only people in your community who are going to know about this are the other kids in his or her class, right? It's not something that gets broadcast.
Right.
Sports is such a visible thing in every community. Every weekend you have parents lining the fields. You have, people driving by. If it's a team that is particularly good, you get friends and family coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's so performative and visible. And it's natural for parents to feel pride and feel good about it. Their kids
Sure.
are on the soccer field or the baseball field or whatever, whatever sport it is. It's really a stage. And parents are so seduced by this. The other aspect I think that's often gets underplayed in this whole parent involvement, and believe me when I tell you I grew up in an era and I played, sports, just choosing up sides with my friends on the playground, which doesn't happen as much anymore, but also played organized sports. I think I can remember small handful of times when my parents, particularly my dad, came to watch me play. It's just this generation of children are the most scrutinized,
Mm,
generation probably of all time in what they do athletically. But the other aspect that I mentioned that I think is underplayed is that it's a very seductive thing for parents, not only because their kids are participating and when you get to see them perform and interact, all that stuff, but it's fun. After a long week of work, I remember I went through it. I still look forward to, the games on the weekends. And when I was
right.
traveling for the Times, the corners I would cut to, stay up all night after the Kentucky Derby in Louisville and drive to Cincinnati at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday and catch the first flight out of Cincy to Newark and drive like a maniac to some town, maybe 45 minutes where I live,
Right.
just to make sure I caught my kids playing travel soccer.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting. It's an adrenaline rush after a week of, you know, hearing your boss give you grief
Mm,
about whatever. But it's also social for the parents. You develop a whole new network of friends,
very
who
true.
are standing on these sidelines week after week, season after season, packing the food, going out to eat. We used to caravan, so all the cars would leave from one spot,
Right.
in town. So I get it. I never want parents who might read the book or listen to me on a podcast to think I am disparaging them for their participation or
Yeah.
even condemning the idea of, um, places for elite young athletes to compete against one another, whether
Right.
it's locally or, traveling far and wide. I just think we have to be very careful at what ages we pressure kids and lay out the possibilities of where sports can take them. I like to say that at this middle grade, from let's say even younger, 5, when they start kicking a soccer ball, to 11 or 12, that youth sports should really be more about developing life skills than
Hmm.
about building a bridge to a D1 college scholarship.
Right.
There's plenty of time for that. I think that's where the disconnect comes and is most impactful. To just get back to what you said before about your son, my second son was very small when he was, in those middle grade, actually on to high school.
Okay.
And when he was in first grade, he played in the town league and he said he wanted to try out for travel soccer after first grade for second grade because his older brother was doing it. And so
Sure.
whatever he could do, I can do, right?
Right.
And so he tried out and he made the B team in town. And he was one of the, better players on the team,
Hmm.
but he was a peanut. I mean, he was a feisty little guy. And actually Z, my main character, in part is based on, at least size-wise, is based on my son
Okay.
Charlie's younger experience. He made the B team and he played and he had a great time and he loved the other kids and the coach. After second grade, he tried out and we got a call from the parent manager of the A team.
Mm.
And he said, we'd like to bring Charlie up to the A team. And at first I was like, wow, this feisty little guy,
Right.
he's
Good
so
for
good.
him.
And then my wife and I started to think about this, that, I mean, believe me when I tell you, he looked like everyone's little brother who could have wandered onto the field from the
Right.
sideline. We thought about it long and hard, several long walks in the neighborhood with our dog discussing this,
Mm.
and we decided to say no without even consulting him. And we decided that it was more important for him to feel like he, at that age and his size, to feel like he was one of the better players on the team than to be the 14th or 15th best player and maybe get put in the game at certain junctures, but mainly ride the
Exactly.
bench, right? So that's what we did. He stayed with this team for years, and he had a wonderful coach who taught them much more about life than sports. I mean, he was a good coach for soccer too. The upshot is that he never really became a soccer star. He did play in high school,
Mm-hmm.
but when he went to high school, he was 4'11",
Okay.
and he also played some basketball. He tried out for the freshman basketball team. He made the team. And then he wound up playing 4 years of high school basketball at a 2,000 student school, which had a pretty good basketball program. He loved it. He played music. He gave so much up because he loved being in the gym and playing basketball.
Right.
And my point is, like when your children grow up and you take inventory of the things that you screwed up and the things that you did well,
So
we like to believe that decision for him at the age of whatever it was, 7 or 8, helped build his self-esteem so that he had the audacity to believe that he could make the high school basketball team despite the fact that he was at least a head taller than every other kid who was trying out. I'm smaller
yeah.
than every other kid who was trying out.
Right.
He went on to play club basketball in college, he's 32, he still plays in men's leagues in New
Love
York.
it.
And we see the benefits of youth sports at its proper level for him in
Mm-hmm.
just about everything that he does in the
Yeah.
world.
I think
So
we're just seeing it now, the ripple effects. My son's a sophomore in college, just finished his first semester sophomore year. We are really just seeing the ripple effects. He actually changed his major last year as a freshman. He thought he wanted to do business, and now he wants to do health and phys ed, and he's reffing basketball, plays in different leagues. He's doing it for the love of the game now. He's teaching other kids how to play basketball, and we're watching his life unfold. He's happy. He's genuinely content. I really do think we are going to see the ripple effects of all of those things that have happened. I also love that you made that point that your book, and you and I both talking, we're not saying youth sports parents, like, what is wrong with you? We are a little bit, but we're also saying that your book is not about that. It's about the benefits of it, and the timing has to be right. And you nailed it when you said around age 12, there's a ton of research that in life in general, this is when parents are suggested. When I was a teacher, I would tell parents this. Your kid should be sending the email now about homework. You can help them and say, let's send the message to your teacher. You talk to the coach. You can help them do that, but they start doing these things around age 12 and 13. What do you think the biggest benefits are when you're playing at those younger ages? There's a couple questions, I guess, packed in here. And then as you get to that 12 and older, that would still have that ripple effect from the youth sports.
I've been saying things like, if your child at the age of 8 or 9 or 10 is playing youth sports because someone, whether it's their parents or their peers or the coaches, are telling them, you could get a D1 scholarship and play at Wake Forest or Michigan State, and you're playing for all the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The benefits that I see, and of course, at whatever sport you're playing, at whatever age, of course, you want to learn skills and develop them and be as good as you can be. But the other things that I feel are the true benefits. We're talking about the average child now. There are the truly exceptional ones that will go on and make something perhaps more advanced of it.
Sure.
But feeling good about yourself physically and emotionally, being able to learn how to be not only a good teammate, but a coachable player. In this world now where you see parents are so focused on getting their kids on that path. If it isn't working for them, they're not getting enough playing time or enough shots or enough scoring opportunities, they take their kid right out and put them in another situation. To me, that's doing it the wrong way. You want your kids to learn how to adapt. You want them to learn how to advocate for themselves. I don't think in all the years my kids played sports, I ever talked to one of their coaches, whether it was at the youth sports level or the high school level, when they were unhappy about, being benched for a game or not
Right.
playing enough. It's your sports career. It's up to you to deal with the coaches and learn how to advocate for yourself. It's learning how to deal with children from all different backgrounds. It's just enjoying being outdoors and the benefits of physical activity. Those are all the things that youth sports, particularly at this middle grade range, are for. Those are the things that I think benefit young children the most. And, at a certain point, when those kids are 12 or 13, if they're playing for those reasons, and they truly enjoy it without feeling this incredible pressure, chances are they will continue playing into adolescence and then, into young adulthood. I think the latest statistics that I've read about kids who start playing youth sports in that early age range, that 60 to 70% of them have quit.
Yep.
Now, why does that happen? Some just, don't particularly like playing a sport, don't feel they're particularly adept at it, whatever. But I would say a good number of these children are just, feeling too much pressure and burning out. And that's sad because the benefits that they can get from continuing on to being part of a team. I know, just let's take high school for something. If you play a fall sport, whether it's field hockey or soccer, one of the sports that start in the fall, when you're a freshman going into your freshman year of high school, practice usually starts sometime in mid-August.
Right.
So before you've ever stepped foot in a classroom, you already feel like you're a part of the high school. It's a great way to assimilate into a high school situation. That's just one of the many benefits that children who are playing a sport, can have, provided they stay with it and feel good about their participations. All the things we like to idealize about youth sports are the reasons to be playing at these young levels.
I was having memories flash back through my brain. I loved my time as a youth sport parent. I coached a lot of the sports too. I would be roped in as a health and phys ed teacher. And my husband and I, he was not health and phys ed, but we often were the volunteer coaches and different things. There's a lot of benefits when your kids can be exposed to that. And as the parents, it is fun.
Hey, Coach, does any of this sound familiar? Your athletes are talented, but they lose focus when the pressure's on. Confidence swings up and down from game to game. Some play tight and second guess themselves. They struggle to reset after mistakes. Think about it. How many games or competitions have you lost, not because the other team was better, but because your athletes got in their own heads? Every coach has seen it. The missed free throw, the strikeout, the dropped pass, not from lack of skill, but from lack of mindset. That's why I created the Champion Within programs, to bring tools that will help unlock peak performance for your athletes. It's also why I lead team workshops on visualization, breath work, and mental skills training to take these conversations off the podcast and bring it to your team. I do this in person and virtually. Imagine your athletes learning how to bounce back faster, handle pressure with confidence, and step into the game mentally sharp and ready. That's the difference mindset training makes. If you're ready to give your team that edge, let's talk. Go down to the show notes after this show and set up a call to see how I can help your athletes win from the inside out.
I'm sitting here nodding my head as you're saying going to talk to the coaches, because I've been on both sides of that, where I'm like, yeah, we're not going and doing that. And where people have also approached me and I'm like, okay, relax. They're 7. Relax. It's really an interesting space to be in. And then now when I'm doing this work in the mindset space, it's also a very interesting world, because a lot of people want every little piece of the puzzle to fit so their kid can get that D1 scholarship. That's so hard to do. And the percentage of the kids that are going to get that is pretty low, and you just said something about the statistics of the kids who continue to play. And what just popped into my head actually is female athletes, although it happens for athletes in general. There is a lot of research behind female athletes who quit playing how this impacts the rest of their life and how the ones who continue go on to be in C-suite and just are more successful. I loved when you sent me some pictures for the podcast promotion when I'm going to put it out there and share our talk with everyone. You had a picture where you interviewed Billie Jean King.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious I know this is kind of a totally different topic, but it just popped into my head with that statistic of girls playing and quitting and athletes in general. Tell me just a little bit about why that was one of your favorite pictures. And then we're going to come back to, I want people to know where they can get that book, because I think it is going to be a great read for so many kids.
Billie Jean is, she's an American icon, global icon, really.
Mm-hmm.
You grow up, I don't know how old, I can't remember how old I was when she had that famous tennis match with Bobby Riggs. But of course, I remember Billie Jean. I'd been pretty much a lifelong tennis fan. So there were certain athletes I admire even more than what they've done, on the field or on the court, for who they've been as human beings, activism and all of that. And so, when you go into sports media and you suddenly find yourself around people that you've idolized growing up, there's a bit of, you have to get over that being starstruck.
Sure.
And, the 1970s New York Knicks, there were only two championship teams in 1970 and 73, and I was young, and I worshiped those guys. And then, I felt like I snapped my fingers. All of a sudden, I was around Madison Square Garden, not necessarily when those guys were playing, but when they were coaching and broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And I had to really, steel myself to be professional around them.
Right.
And so Billie Jean, I remember, I think that was one of the first time I ever was talking to her one-on-one. And it was at a women's sports organization called Awesome. The woman who was doing public relations for it said, is there anybody you'd like to sit down with? I was there doing a column for the Times. And I said, Billie Jean,
Please.
And the next thing I know, there I was at a table just sitting talking to her. Now, in the years subsequent to that, I've had several opportunities to be around her. And I had breakfast with her once in Manhattan.
Very cool.
For a column that I did when she won the Arthur Ashe Award for the ESPYs. Just those moments that you get to share with people who are just larger than their sport. They transcend it, have been special to me. So there were certain photos that I keep on my desktop, on my laptop, to always have available. And that one popped out at me when we talked about,
very cool.
We were emailing about photos.
Yeah, I loved it. Probably a hard question. If you could take one thing from those conversations and say, I got to sit down with Billie Jean and all these really cool people throughout my career, and now I'm writing this book for youth athletes. If you could take maybe one or two, because it's probably hard to take one piece of advice or a little part of our conversation and give it to a youth athlete and their parents, maybe two different pieces of advice there, what would you give?
Well, all these great athletes that I've had the good fortune of following all over the world. I've covered 10 Olympics and I've covered many Wimbledons, and I've just been to multiple continents to follow athletes. And I have my favorites, of course.
Sure.
People say to me, who are your favorite? I would say I have one male, and that would be Magic Johnson, and the female would be Martina Navratilova. Just what her life was like as defecting at a young age to the United States, and what that must have been like for her, how difficult leaving her family, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing that runs through the stories of all of these athletes are, when I've interviewed them, is the level of sacrifice that they've had to make to reach the point in their lives that they did and to be successful. And so they've all talked about the passion that they've had to do what they do, but also the perspective, the realism that goes into, to just the amount of years that you put into this.
Right.
So I would say that in the book, I've tried to convey that perspective that, yes, you have to be dedicated, but you also have to be realistic. And I think that um, I want kids who read the book to come away with the understanding that you really need to love something to succeed at it, but to also um, to not let it become such an obsession that you neglect other parts of your life.
Hmm.
Most of these people, for instance, most of the great athletes that I've been around through my years covering sports journalism played multiple sports.
Right.
And yet now we're in the age of specialization where, again, a lot of these companies are telling people that you have to commit yourself 12 months a year. Most great athletes will tell you that's nonsense and that they
Mm-hmm.
should, just to exercise the various muscles and to avoid the kind of injuries that we're now seeing in various sports because kids are not, doing different things.
Right. I hope
So
everyone turns that part up
what's
and
that?
rewind. I hope everyone rewinds and turns the volume up on that part
Yeah,
because that's incredibly important for people to pay attention to.
yeah, yeah. But I always, the parents, I've interviewed many parents of kids who were elite athletes or are elite athletes, and they always kind of, simplify it uh, to say that, how do you know? How do you know that you should make that financial commitment
Mm.
or time investment? And I remember one parent whose daughter became an elite soccer player at the University of North Carolina and is now the president and general manager of the Women's Professional Soccer League's team here
Okay.
in northern New Jersey, the Gotham.
Okay.
And I remember her telling me when I asked that question, you don't know, but you get a fairly good indication when you never have to call upstairs to your child and say, come down right now, you're going to be late for practice,
Right.
right? She's the one who was at the door, you
Let's
know,
go.
bouncing her soccer ball, calling up to me to say, if you don't get down here now, I'm going to be late. There are ways that children tell you,
Mm-hmm.
how passionate they are about any given thing. And again, I just want to reiterate that if you have a child like that, by the time they're 12, 13, 14, um, there's nothing wrong, nothing at all. And they shouldn't be judged as being sports obsessed and
Right.
trying to push their kid. Because if you had a gifted child who's, gifted as a classic violinist or a great artist or a singer, yes, you're going to do the same things to
Mm-hmm.
try to, you know, nurture that child's talent. Again, the point of the book and the point of targeting middle grade readers is that it's too young at that age
Right.
to be applying that kind of ambition and pressure. In all likelihood, you'll wind up burning them out more than you will encourage them to pursue their particular gift.
I think that just perfectly describes how every parent should be paying attention to it because you do know. My son played on AAU teams and he wanted to do that. I mean, he was like, let's go, let's go. There were basketballs bouncing. We actually bought the kind of basketball that was that soft basketball so he could bounce it in the house and he would just be dribbling regular basketballs everywhere. And, it is what it is. We fixed a lot of things in the house because of it and it's okay. And then there came a point where he just made a decision. I'm happier playing in this area now. My daughter is the same way. She runs track now. She gave up field hockey and different things, and she runs all three seasons for high school. She absolutely loves it. She is up and packed, ready to go. She's all in. And you just know with your kid, if you're paying attention, if you're forcing your child to play again in 7th grade because you want them to, that is about you. You have to take a minute there and reflect. It's important to say that it is okay if your kid does want to be a part of those teams because there is a whole group of people that will say to parents on the flip side, you're doing too much. Your kid shouldn't be doing these things when, like you just explained, there is the time and place for a child who really does belong at that club level, elite level. And, you have to know your child. So I think it's important for my listeners. I know in the beginning, some people are going to be like, like you're bashing us. That's not what's happening,
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. I really also want to say when you were talking about this, it just popped into my head. come from a mother who's an educator. She was a biology teacher. My grandmother was an educator, and my youngest guy is dyslexic and he's cracked the code. Reading is something that is very important and close to my heart as an educator. It's really related to the work I do now, even as a mindset specialist. I think that the goal of the game, your book, would be a really great addition to the summer reading lists for middle school age, maybe even the end of elementary, those fourth, fifth graders. I'm thinking as a mom, we get those lists of books that the schools say, this would be a great book. You get to choose some books to read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just throwing it out there to all of my educators because I do go to schools and do assemblies and things like that where I get to teach body language and cool stuff. This would be a book I would love to see on those reading lists. Tell me, Harvey, where can I buy it as a mom if people want to buy it for their own kid, or maybe a school district is thinking right now, we should add this to our reading list. Where can they go and set that up?
Yeah, well, the book is available now on, the normal, the typical Amazon and Barnes & Noble sites.
Mm-hmm.
I have a website, harveyaraton.com, where they can read a little more about the book and order it through there. But also Kohler Books is the publisher. And so through Kohler Books, they could order it. If it was a school, they could order it in bulk with a pretty significant discount for ordering the books, several box of books or things like that. So yeah, it's available at the usual outlets. And yeah, I'm hoping to do some school appearances, talk to kids, develop a program, try to get them involved in a discussion about what sports, the role that they wanted to play in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely drop the links in the show notes. So for all of my listeners who are listening, we're going to make it super easy for you. I will put every one of those links down in our show notes. So you just have to scroll down, click on that link and connect you. And then if you want to buy it in bulk for your school, I'm thinking right now, I used to be in a book club with my daughter, was at the middle school. They bought books, like Harvey was just saying, in bulk, and we all got copies. We had to select the book we wanted. If that was my oldest son in that book group, I don't know why I wasn't in the book group with him. Maybe they didn't have it that year. I don't know. But I remember doing it with my daughter. Anyway, he would have loved reading a book like this. And I do remember the book list coming home and him saying, I don't love any of these books. So this is a great book for someone like my son, and all kinds of kids in different groups of kids. If you're not a soccer player, it wouldn't matter if he was a soccer player. The theme of this book would connect with him as a basketball player. So yeah, I think that it would be a really cool addition if people could add that.
Yeah, there's some baseball involved in the book.
Okay, cool.
There's also, because I covered so much basketball through the years, there's a running joke that relates to the NBA.
Awesome.
So I tried to, drop a little bit of everything in it. But, I think for any kid who's come up through the ranks playing any team sport, they can relate to the trials and tribulations of, what Z goes through, over the course of the story.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would want to say before we get to our last question that I ask all of my guests, to either any athlete or parents listening related to the book or mindset in general that you think they need to know?
Yeah, I would just say that particularly in these times, I meant to say before that Congress there's a subcommittee on early education and secondary education that is now taking up this issue about youth sports and how costly it's becoming. I'm not sure if there's anything they would legislate or whatever, but maybe to try and echo some of the things that we're talking about in advising parents to be careful, because they did mention that in an opening statement the other day about how kids as young as 8 are being sold as bill of goods, that they have to get on board or they'll never amount to anything.
Right.
And that's just not true. But I would say that, to just offer a succinct line of advice to parents is that you can't create an elite athlete with cash. You can't just, it's not like you can just pour a lot of money and turn them into something that they may not be. And statistically probably will not be. If we
Right.
go by what we mentioned before, the odds of becoming uh, a D1 athlete, I would just say that always keep that in mind. Let your child experience sports through self-discovery. They'll figure it out for themselves. You always want to support them and you want to make things available for them, but don't force it upon them because you'll wind up just basically pushing them in the other direction.
Great advice. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, Harvey, I always ask my guests this. If you were the main character in a movie called The Champion Within, and we're watching the movie, the screen goes out, goes to black, all of the audience is on a cliffhanger moment, what do you think that they would be hoping happens next for you?
Well, when I saw that question, when you sent it to me, I thought that's a pretty engaging thing to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about it yesterday. Since I've been a tennis player for all of my adult life, I played a little bit as a kid, but not enough to be considered a child tennis player.
Okay.
I've always thought of tennis as something of a metaphor for how to live my life, whether it's, professionally and personally. And the reason why I say that, Kate, is because tennis is such a mental game and you're alone out there for the most part. And so it's common knowledge among tennis players that people tighten up and instead of like hitting out or playing loosely, they start to just push the ball back and just to not make mistakes. And that's not a great way to go through life if, again, we're using it as a metaphor.
Right.
And so I've always played my best when, I just was aggressive and, and I guess not afraid to fail. Unfortunately for me, about a little over a year ago, I tore my Achilles tendon on the tennis court by not being afraid to fail because I was chasing balls into corners. That was the strength of my game.
Okay.
So I tore my Achilles, had the surgery. I'm pretty much fully recovered and back to physical activity, except that I have not gotten over the mental hump of returning to the tennis
Play
court
tennis.
because it's such
Okay.
a traumatic injury and you hear it, you almost hear it sounds like a gunshot, that you hear. And
Right.
I've been around enough athletes, whether it was, Kobe Bryant and, all the basketball players who have torn their Achilles. And so I missed this last spring and summer season at the club that I belong to. And so if my life were, if the movie were about my life,
Right.
and the audience and it would fade to black, I would hope that the audience would be chanting, "Get back out there, get over that hump and play," because I don't want to go through the rest of my life feeling defeated by that injury. So I'm hoping that in the spring when the weather warms up,
Right.
that I'm going to make that leap and get back out on the tennis court.
Well, dare I say, as the mindset specialist that I am, that we'll shift that word to hope to I am going to get back out there, even if it's just a little bit. You're not aggressively running to the corners at first, just get out there a little bit because it does sound like you really do love it. So I hope that if it was the hypothetical movie that it really does happen, but in real life that it happens for you. Because
and even as an older person, some of the things that we talk about, the benefits of youth sports, kind of flip to your advancing years where it's social. You're out there on a beautiful, crisp morning.
Very true.
And you walk away. If I hit one passing shot down the line that I really step into, that's what I take away. Not all the backhands that I flub into the net.
Right.
So it's all those positive things that you experienced as a child, if you're playing doubles, being part of a team, all that stuff. I did miss it this year. And so I'll go your path and say I'm getting back out there next spring.
I love it. Good. I love that. I'm excited for you, and you have to keep me updated. Send me a message after you get out there the first time.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward for you to experience that again. And so true. I say that all the time to everyone. Find something you loved when you were a child, and let's see if we can get the adult version, even if it's not the same exact thing, because it's true. We need to have that in our life. Anyone who's listening right now, how can you do that? Steal that from us and put that into your life because you can get the benefits too, not just our kids. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. As I said in the beginning, I'm sure we could talk about so many different things. I selfishly loved hearing about all of the different experiences and the advice you had. I know my listeners are going to be sending me messages that this was a great conversation. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely my pleasure. And I appreciate you having me so much.
You're welcome. All right, champions, thanks for hanging with us. Make sure you go down to those show notes, click on the links, go get your copy of the book, and we will see you on Sunday for Speedy Sunday.
Thank you for hanging out with Kate today. And whether you're going to coach, teach, cheer from the sidelines, or hitting the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show for the latest episodes, as we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and sanity in our busy lives. Now, go and unleash your champion within you, one step at a time. We're always rooting for you.